This is Ronald, the rules lawyer. I'm going to tell the story today of the rise and fall of my first after-school D&D Pathfinder program. Before making this channel, I was a teacher of middle school students, teaching them tabletop role-playing games. And if you want more background, you can refer to my channel, Wrap. But the quick version is that I became an attorney in 2009. I was not making money, and I still don't to this day, working for a civil rights and immigrant rights organization. And the city of Berkeley was contracting people to run after-school enrichment programs. So next to sports and academic and homework workshops that they were having programs in hobbies and other things that kids were interested in. So I signed up. And to this day, and this was 2012, and to this day, I remember my first day was September 12th, and arriving and there being no one there. And eventually 2 people filed in, and I was a little nervous. I thought, okay, this is an okay start. Maybe it will get bigger. And then suddenly a gaggle of 4 kids, 6th graders, walked in together who already knew each other, and then we kicked it off. I remember clearly asking who wanted to be a game master and wanted to run games. And I remember one kid in particular named Simon, who had this look in his eyes. His hands shot up and he had a big grin and was looking at me and was extremely willing. And I knew I had another game master. And we were running we were using Pathfinder First Edition, and we were limited to the beginner box, which has 4 basic classes. I also called the class the Guild, the idea being that me and the students were actual people in this guild that adventured together, and our motto was adventure is our craft, and I called myself the Grand Master, which they called me too. And we had this structure where every person was level 1 when they started the class, and by playing in adventures, they could earn experience points and earn gold that would go to their character. And even if their character died, they can make a new character that was the same level as the student was. And they could get more experience and gold if they did particular things like running a game or helping me clean up or not being a bad student. It was my incentive program basically to make sure that people contributed and were well behaved, and it worked. I started a website, and an early post on that site, I'll link to it in the description, is of me telling the tragic tale of a total party kill and how the students needed to make new characters. And I already was planning for them to encounter undead versions of themselves. One incentive to get experience points was to be what I called a recruiter. If a student convinced someone else to join the class, and that someone else cited them as the person who invited them to come or convinced them to come, they would get experience points to recruit that person. And the class started to grow. So the class was very successful that fall. It grew to about 17 enrolled. We met on Mondays and Wednesdays after school, and on Wednesdays we got 12 people at once. And my original plan to stick to the 4 beginner box classes was jettisoned. The students pushed me to expand the options, both in classes and races as well. And I adopted the beginner box conversions made by Edo War of Pathfinder 1E classes and races for my students. Needless to say, running a class of 12 middle schoolers was very challenging. I understand the challenges that full-time teachers have. I would say too that at least for my class, there was an extra challenge in that you really can't address everybody in a single lecture format the way role-playing games are. Everybody needs individual attention. Everybody needs help on their character. You basically are entrusting running a group, an adventure, to individual students who become game masters, and dealing with the drama that might result when you give one student potential power that they could abuse. And then all the drama being someone of that age. All these things were things I had to deal with. Another thing that happened is that sometimes not every kid would be in a group for whatever reason. Maybe their GM had to leave early, or we had an odd number in the class. And so one of the students took his character sheet and sat down with another, and they started to have their characters fight each other. And that made me realize, how fun would it be to have a structured tournament in the class of people's characters. There'd be some parameters. Everyone would be the same level going in and have a certain amount of gold. But yeah, we can see who is the quote champion unquote of the guild. Those who win matches will get a lot of experience points and gold. So everybody, of course, was all in and excited by the tournament. And so on December 1st, I was pretty optimistic about the spring. I was thinking of approaching the director of the after-school program about having our 2-hour blocks be extended to 3 hours. And I put up a post talking about how the spring would be awesome, how a lot of students their characters are now starting to approach level 6. Marshals would get a second attack. They'd be fighting more powerful creatures like vampires and bigger dragons. Higher level clerics could raise the dead. I was also talking about students possibly running campaigns that they were thinking of that would be consistent from week to week, about students designing their own races using Pathfinder's Advanced Race Guide, and possibly using other RPG systems. Also, one of the parents who was picking up his kids, the father of Simon, visited and approached me and talked about how great it was for his son. And through him, we figured out how we could organize some of the other kids and their parents to hire me to run outside of the school a weekend campaign. And I ran Rise of the Rune Lords and Shattered Star that winter, at least the start of those campaigns. One day, the director of the after-school program sat down with me and told me that they were having budgetary problems. And was I open to having my class reduced from 2 days a week to 1? I said I was, but that was highly undesirable, that the students wanted to do so much more than they had time for already, and that if it had to come down to 1 day a week, hopefully that could be expanded to a 3-hour block. The director told me that he was hopeful that this cut would not have to happen, but I should just be aware that it might. January comes around and I run the tournament, and that was very challenging to run. People were very invested in winning, and people at that age could get hurt if they didn't win. One of the students used his gold budget to fill the dungeon that was the arena with camels that spit on the enemies. I took a mental note to have restrictions on what they could do in any future tournament. Friday, January 24th comes around, and our last day of the semester is the following Wednesday. So I put up a post talking about running the entire class in an adventure, the Tomb of Horrors, the Notorious Killer Dungeon, as a way to celebrate the semester. And also reporting that some students were planning their Undead Apocalypse campaign for the spring. Well, I get an email that Saturday night from the director of the after-school program saying, I met with my supervisor and went over the budget, but I do not have enough in my budget to carry the class for another semester. I will continue working to find funding for the class. Unfortunately, the last week of the class will be the last week of January until further notice. So I was alarmed, to say the least. I think one thing that was going on is that this being an enrichment program, D&D was not really seen as a big educational boon to the students in it. And the traditional things you do in a after-school program, sports, academic support, were prioritized. Whereas the Berkeley community didn't and does not share in the satanic panic of the 80s against D&D. There probably was just some less so than now, some ignorance about how huge it could be to find ways face-to-face for kids to use their skills and interact with each other and play social games like Pathfinder and D&D. The very next day was a meetup of one of the weekend RPGs that I had started running. And I forwarded this email to that parent I mentioned earlier and a few others from the weekend program and said we needed to do something. What can we do to stop this? And every parent who dropped off their kid for the weekend RPG session, I raised it with them. That father writes back and says that his wife is going to, quote, be taking up the banner for our family in this crusade. That very night, Leia wrote the following email to the director saying, I'm writing to you because we just heard today that there is a plan to cancel the tabletop role-playing after-school group at King. Yikes. Can we please work together to find a way to continue this class? Our son, Simon Grundy Reiner, is a 6th grader this year and joined the group immediately when he started the school year. I don't know if I can find strong enough words to say how important this class is to him and the other kids who are involved in it. Our kid is a little bit of a quirky guy. He's never going to be a team sports star or a big musical success in band, even though we make him do both sports and band. But in the Pathfinder group, his creativity and wacky sense of humor shine, and he can actually be a respected leader among his peers. He's had a bit of a hard time socially in the past, but this is one place he can completely fit in. I know for a fact he's not the only kid in that group who experienced bullying in elementary school and was scared about starting middle school, but found a safe haven with this group. Thanks to this group and to Ronald's thoughtful and committed mentoring, he's beginning to make friends and have a community of friends for the first time in his life. It has been an absolute godsend. When Simon came home and told me he thought the group was going to be canceled, I heard a defeated tone in his voice that sounded crushingly like how he sounded during some of the hardest times in elementary school. I really hope, as adults, we can figure out a way to turn this around and continue to give a social home to kids like Simon who march to their own drum and often have a hard time fitting in, especially in middle school. So that's my earnest plea from the heart. And on a more practical financial note, I wanted to be sure you know for budget purposes that this is the only after-school King activity Simon participates in. So if it were canceled, it would actually be a financial loss to the overall program because he'd no longer go to Visionaries, the program. And in fact, we would gladly pay more to keep the class going if that's what it takes. How much of a financial hole is the class in? I understand there are 17 kids signed up for it on Wednesdays. Is that not enough to make it financially viable? Are other classes being canceled too, or just this one? How are those decisions made? What can we or other parents do to help? Looking forward to hearing from you soon so we can start work on this right away. We want to do whatever we need to do to make sure this wonderful group has a chance to continue this spring. Signed by both the parents. Another email comes in that the director of the program read from another parent. This is the father of one of the students named Sal. I just heard that King Middle School is planning to cancel the after-school Pathfinder program. I am the parent of a 6th grader in that program on both Mondays and Wednesdays, and we are very disappointed to hear about this. The kids don't just play a game. They read extensively. They prepare characters, backstories for their characters, and stories and logs about their adventures. They prepare storylines to oversee the game as dungeon masters. They exercise their creativity, practice making sound judgments in the face of difficult choices, and work on social skills in their interactions with the group and as part of their adventures. Our son never did so much reading and writing as he has as a result of the Pathfinder program, and we can see a real difference in his abilities since he started.
Nothing happens to you! You splash in the water, but it hit you back so hard that you take one damage.
Sitting here, I'm trying to think of a single other Visionaries program that provides more to the student participants, and I am coming up blank. We joined the Visionaries program in large measure because of the Pathfinder program. We prepaid the entire year on the understanding that it was offered this year. Our son attends on both Mondays and Wednesdays, and that forms most of his participation in the Visionaries program. What can we do to ensure that Pathfinder remains a Visionaries program at King? That day, I run my Monday class, and there is no response from the director until late at night, in which he says something that didn't happen. He says, I spoke with Ronald and offered him the option of running the class 1 day per week for 2 hours instead of 2 days per week for 2 hours each class. However, Ronald turned down this option, forcing me to cancel the class for the spring. Well, the parents forwarded that to me, and I clarified what I actually wanted, which was, of course, I don't want the class cut down to 1 day, but if it had to be cut down, I hoped it could be a longer class. I never ruled it out entirely. I wrote to the parents, I need more time to be able to mentor the students. If there were only 2 hours per week, then I am running one game while the novice game master runs another, and I'm not in the position to give assistance, feedback, or mentorship. At times, the students aren't happy with where the game is going. They get up and leave the game and find something else to do. Not a good experience for a budding game master. This is compounded by the fact that tabletop RPGs involve long-running stories with consistent players or casts. With only 2 hours a week, there would not be enough time slots to, 1, allow me to GM a regular weekly campaign session to set a high standard and inspire students with ideas of how they could GM, and 2, allow more students to try their hand at GMing themselves and have their own campaigns that could meet weekly. On top of that, there are other fun ideas, such as the elimination tournament we just had, or spending time when everyone is just talking, making characters, or planning campaigns with fellow GMs that would become even harder to accommodate. So Leia wrote a long email to all of the parents and students we were mustering, basically clearing up the situation and making clear, too, that while we would accept 1 day, if that were ever offered to us, we really need the program not to be cut. She also wrote to the director, making clear our position. The director wrote back at 11:45 p.m. on Tuesday saying, "Thank you for all of the heartfelt emails. I am thankful to have parents who are this passionate about a class in our program and who advocate so enthusiastically for their students. I truly understand the value that this class has for the students involved and that it has brought students to the program who would not otherwise have seen themselves as part of the King Visionaries program. I am working with a very small budget for enrichment classes for the spring. I am working diligently to keep the classes that the students really want. This is not the only class that I am trying to keep. That being said, if I am able to scale back the classes that were previously held multiple days per week to 1 day per week, that allows me to keep more classes. If I can scale back the tabletop class to 1 2-hour class per week, I can fund that with my present budget through June. Anything over that amount is more than my budget will allow. Ronald, please let me know how you want to proceed." I responded immediately and said that was fine. And I also said that the class would hugely benefit from having a second day and that the parents are willing to raise money in order for that to be possible. And what are ways parents can support that? The other parents also sent emails of thanks, but also pressed that we should find a way to keep the second day in. Leia wrote to people that afternoon, "Oh my goodness, guess what, everybody? I stopped by to see the director today just to say thanks and bring him some cupcakes on behalf of all of us, and he told me the class is uncanceled. Apparently he met with his supervisor, his boss, and the director of the Learns program overall, and they figured out some funding to reinstate both days of the Pathfinder class effective immediately. Woohoo! I didn't 100% understand what the whole budget scenario was, but the bottom line is that they apparently shuffled some money this morning and found the funding for this class for the rest of the year for 2 days a week. He did say that the letters and outpouring of passionate support for the class made a real difference, so thank you, everybody. I'd like to suggest that we all write one more quick thank you note to the director for putting the class back together again and to his supervisor. Thanks again to everybody, and as Ronald said to me earlier this morning, this was a real campaign full of heroism and adventure. It's been great adventuring with all of you. That afternoon, meanwhile, was that class that I said was going to be the last class of the semester. And so I decided to share the news with my students. Attention! I have a major announcement.
And then when the other person tries to do something.
I have a major announcement. Okay, a lot of you got an email about how we possibly would not have the guild anymore. And I found out that actually that's not true. We're going to have it in the spring. And I know. And we're going to have it 2 days. We're going to stay at 2 days a week, not one.
We're gonna stay at 2 days!
Yeah. So, one of the things we're going to do today is we're going to... Mr. Made this decision because so many of you and your parents made your opinions clear.
About to!
And so what we should do at the end...
Are you recording this?
I am. This is history. We should draw up like a poster, like a thank you thing for Mr. Lee.
I just heard lighter effect.
Pathfinder! Thank you, California!
About not.
Yes. Well, as you can tell, maybe from my announcement and from the students, that we were all absolutely elated that we were able to keep the class. It would continue to remain a class until the COVID pandemic hit for the next 7 years. After the class ended that day, I wrote an email to all the parents I was in touch with and all the students, thanking them for their support, talking about the thank you poster we made. One of the students had drawn a dragon. So the director wrote to the parents that night at 11:53 p.m. saying, "After the heartfelt emails and passionate pleas from all of you, I was able to move some things around to squeeze enough out of the budget to keep the class for the 2 days per week through the first week of June. I will send out an updated schedule with the additional day reflected on it. Your students can sign up for the classes in my office. I also want to extend my thanks for the wonderful cupcakes that were brought in today. My staff truly enjoyed them. When I turned around to partake in one, they had already been devoured. There were only crumbs left in the box. Enjoy the class." If you're wondering to yourself, why did this video have this title? The class didn't actually end. The class did end for a couple days, and I wasn't going to spoil the ending. I'd sent out an email to Leia and other parents after getting the news that the class was maintained for 1 day, saying my own thoughts on what could have happened. And I thought sharing that could be useful for people who are fighting cuts in their own programs that are of high educational benefit. So I wrote an email titled, "What I Think Really Happened." I write, "We won. We were able to prevent the class from being canceled, and we might find a way to maintain it at 2 days per week. In my opinion, there actually was not a misunderstanding from my earlier conversation with the director. He knew very well that the class was popular, and so he had a meeting with me, and I don't think any other contractor, about the possibility of meeting once per week. I made clear it was not a good idea, but did not close off the possibility, even proposing that if it was necessary, the class should meet 3 hours instead of 2. Nothing was clear about the budget, and so nothing was agreed upon, and he knew it. His budget was then axed, and he was in a tough position. He couldn't maintain all the programs he wanted. At the same time, he didn't want to appear to favor one of the new smaller classes over the others, and ours was one of the smaller classes. And so he carried out an across-the-board cut. But he knew the tabletop class was very popular with the relatively small number of parents and students who are in it. So he gave me a heads up and said he was looking for more funding, being deliberately vague so as to raise my hopes and make me feel it was not necessary to activate parents and students on this at that time. After all, he would prefer that nobody raise a stink that he would have to accommodate if it came up. If he granted leniency to one class, he might have to do the same for others. But we raised a stink, and he had to give in. His email to me saying that he rejected 1 day was a way to save face. He always had known he could reapproach me with an offer to lower it to 1 day, but didn't. Now he is conceding, but by painting it all as a misunderstanding, he could 1, appear like he never was for eliminating the program entirely, and 2, not appear like he was giving in to pressure because, after all, this was his position all along. This is all my roundabout way of saying it was entirely because of pressure from us that we saved the class, and to give my thanks. I don't have much to add yet, but I hope that recording and what I've shown to you today really, it was a big deal. This class was for those students and for the future students who would join it, and something that I would love to continue again once it becomes possible for me and the people I live with health-wise. It's what drives me. Some people, when I was teaching that class, I would tell people, I'm not only an RPG teacher, I'm also a lawyer and an activist. And this is my way of telling all of you, I'm not just a RPG YouTuber, I'm also a teacher who likes teaching young people. So that's my video. If you let me know what you think. Let me know if you have questions about the after school class, about how I did it. If you want to hear more stories about things we did, like the tournaments that we would hold. First of all, you can check out the website of the class. We have over 1,000 posts. Yeah, we held tournaments. We also had a kind of shared campaign that had its own newspaper. There's a lot of funny stories I could tell. And yeah, let me know if I'm going to read all your comments and I'll answer what I can, but I'll also save some of the answers if I think it could make good content for the future. So that's it. If you like what you've seen, please like and subscribe. I'm going to be making more videos about tabletop RPGs. Support my Patreon if you haven't yet, because I don't have a regular income and I want to be able to continue doing what I love doing. And also join the Discord community and check out my channel. Okay, so that's it. This has been The Rules Lawyer. I will see you next time.